The GBNews Tavern is open. I'm joined by broadcaster, sports fanatic and political campaigner Jonny Gould. Jonny,
good to see you, Nigel.
Good to see you. Now, Aston Villa. West Midlands man.
Cheers, mate. Up the Villa.
Was it football that got you into sport, or was it all sport that always interested you?
It was. Dad used to bring home the Express and Star and the Evening Mail every night. He used to tell me off every night because I started from the back page. And he basically said to me, you've got to start reading the newspaper from the front, look at news and politics and current affairs. And I said, I just love sport. And he said, you'll never get a job out of that. You'll never earn any money from that. And he always reminded me of that. But it has been a great career. But I'm very much now in news and current affairs.
Yeah, I know that you've kind of moved on with it. But you know, when it comes to being a sporting broadcaster, which is what you became, I mean, how does a young kid that likes football become a sporting broadcaster? Because it's like that's like a dream, isn't it?
It is. I just went for it. I started doing hospital radio, like so many kids did. I was told that hospital radio was a big hospital radio station, Birmingham Hospital Radio, 30 hospitals around Birmingham and Solihull, and they said, you can't be ambitious here. You've got to just devote your time to... Yeah, right. So I did that for a year or so at 18, and then I wrote to, BBC local radio, and I had approximately this voice as a kid. Got myself on the breakfast show, which was a bit of a shock. Had an out-of-body experience in my first bulletin. It was a surprise to me to be on air. And the rest is history. One of the great things is, from the word go, when you work in sport, when you work in a studio with sport, you work with absolutely everybody, the greatest broadcasters. And Birmingham people, maybe people around the country will remember Tony Butler, who was the first guy I ever worked with. Yeah. Who was this Brummie who used to go, on your bike, son. He was like, when accents became trendy in about 1975, people stopped talking like that on air and started to talk with A-up accents wherever they were from. And there was a Brummie thing going on with great broadcasters in Birmingham.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, sports broadcasters, sports commentators, they build up a great rapport, don't they, with their public? A great rapport. It means a lot, You
have to.
What are the sports you love best?
Football is my thing.
Yep.
I love tennis as well.
Yep.
I used to love snooker. I'm not saying I fell out of love with it, but it sort of became about whatever Ronnie O'Sullivan was doing, and players now who, it's not as glamorous it was, but I think snooker benefited from the fact that football went down the chute in the 80s because of Heysel and Hillsborough, and it was just so televisual. There was the bad one, Alex Higgins. There was the well-groomed one, everyone's favourite son, Steve Davis. There was the grinder. It had great personality.
And, of course, there were fewer TV channels.
Yeah.
So I think it was the final that Dennis Taylor won in the late 80s.
That was great.
And I watched that. It was dramatic stuff.
Brilliant.
And was 18 million people watching
That's
it.
right.
Like 11:30, quarter to midnight on a Sunday night. Sports coverage has changed, hasn't it? I talked about a few channels. Now, cricket's the game that I love to watch on television. Yeah. But I watch everything else as well, and pleased to see Palace winning 4-0 in the quarterfinals the other day.
It's possible.
So I come, but I follow Jonny, I'll watch anything, sports-wise. I mean, I enjoy pretty much anything. But it was quite easy, wasn't it, really? Because you had, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, then Channel 4 did cricket for a bit. Did it very well, I thought, actually.
Yes.
Now, I pay a Sky subscription because I want to watch overseas cricket, but then it just came to the recent tour, and Sky weren't covering that, so then I have to subscribe to BT Sport. And now if I want to watch a particular boxing match, that'll be another 10 or 15 quid to watch that. Are they putting sport beyond the price range of lots of the fans?
They are, and worse still, actually, they're creating a problem in terms of the next generation being captivated by it. Cricket's big problem was that they put it behind the Sky paywall. What's happened to it? They've actually created a football concept. I think cricket has diminished because they've taken too much money from Sky, and the debate within cricket now is to try and put it more on terrestrial television. There was a bit of Channel 4 action, wasn't there, with repeats late at night, Mark Nicholas, etc. Yeah. They've got to do more of that.
Well, that 2000... I just did a tribute to Shane Warne.
Yes.
Who not only was a genius cricketer, but also became a celeb across the Aussie, UK thing brilliantly. But I remember 2005, that amazing Ashes series, when it was nip and tuck all the way through. You didn't know till the last day of the last test at the Oval, who was going to win. And that afternoon, there were 8 million people. You know, they should have been at work, most of them. But there were 8 million people watching cricket on terrestrial TV. And now, because, as I say, you've got to have BT Sport and you've got to have Sky, now the number wouldn't even be, well, it'd probably be about 10% of that.
Absolutely.
So that is an issue, isn't it?
At every level of every sport, there is the shop floor, the industry, should we say, and then there is the opportunity to engage millions of more people. I think about that with the Champions League, which is arguably the greatest football in the world, which is behind a paywall. And then you've got the World Cup, which everyone gets involved in because it's on ITV and BBC. And however big football is, it needs that engagement. Crowds do go up, the popularity goes up. And the same goes for cricket. If they're going to have a 5 or 6 test series in the summer, one of them needs to be on ITV or Channel 4, somewhere, BBC.
Can you explain to me how, and I was there at the final of the European Championships.
Yes.
I mean, shocking crowd.
Yeah, you got in.
I think we talked about it.
And you had a ticket, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I didn't jump the barrier or anything like that.
Not you.
But I saw a few that...
Yeah, I bet you did.
How is it that Italy beat England on penalties and win and are the champions and haven't lost a game of football for, I think it was 37 games? You know, looked to be an amazing side.
Yeah.
The great goalkeeper, the lot. And now they get beaten by North Macedonia and haven't qualified for the World Cup. How does that happen? Or is that why we watch sport?
Exactly. I would say it put North Macedonia on the map, but I still don't know where it is. But that's the amazing thing. Italy had qualified for every single World Cup until the last one, which also they failed. This is a real crisis for Italian football. But they are the maddest football nation. I mean, they won the World Cup in 2006, and the bottom had fallen out of their Lo Scudetto, their title, because there was corruption and relegation of their major clubs. And yet their national team came together and won it. And so they can be the European champion and lose World Cups either side. This is something that England never do. Italy are a tournament side. They were my tip to win the tournament at Euro 2020 until we got to the final where I had to be patriotic and tip England. Of course, Italy were inevitably going to win that one.
Well, Jonny, you and I could talk about sports for hours, but I've got to move on. As you said, you know, you're doing more current affairs, commentary, and podcasting, and all the things you're doing. And you had some pretty strong feelings about Jeremy Corbyn, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It kind of launched the positive part of my podcast. It's called Jonny Gould's Jewish State. It's not a campaign for Israel per se, although I do support the state of Israel, of course. It's about the state of me and the state of, I think, the diaspora Jewish community. And I have guests on which challenge all sorts of mainstream orthodoxy, which when you're Jewish is not very difficult to do because there are so many opinions and so many different ideas out there. And my guests do that. So the last guest I had on is a guy who tweets in Arabic exclusively. He has 500,000 followers. He's an Israeli. He was born in Beirut in Lebanon. And he challenges the Arab populace with content about Israel, which they never get. They're lied to by their mainstream media. And this guy's called Eddie Cohen. I had Professor Alan Dershowitz on.
Did you?
Yeah. And I asked him about the BBC. And he said I was the perfect guy to ask about the BBC. He accused them of advocacy, not journalism, because they're always about getting people on one side of the story and not the other. He said he was the perfect person to ask. And when they kind of shamed him and then they said this is below our standards, even if you didn't know anything about Dershowitz, as I'm sure most people didn't actually know the ins and outs of the case and the allegations which he says are completely false against him. When the BBC say that he fell below their standards, what does that mean? It is a slander of a kind. So I really go for good guests. And it is an interesting listen, I'd like to think, and it's not just...
He's got good guests. Never invited me, obviously. But
you're on my hit list. I shouldn't say that, should I?
Corbyn, anti-Semitism. Has Starmer beaten it off?
He is trying to be the man who isn't Corbyn. And he isn't an anti-Semite. And he is Sir Keir Starmer, not Jeremy Corbyn. However, he has not addressed the simmering undercurrent of the broad church that is the Labour Party and anti-Semitism. My friend was walking his dog in the park in Dollis Hill today and came across Ken Livingstone with a huge bunch of Palestinian flags, about one man and his dog there, 15 people, and they are talking about, well, they're doing the Palestinianism. They're talking about...
And that's become very trendy on the left,
It's terrible. And by the way, while they're doing that, they are on the side of a murderous campaign. 11 Israelis, and actually some of them aren't Israelis, some of them were Ukrainian nationals, Jewish, non-Jewish, a Christian policeman. They were murdered along the street in assorted cities, one in Hadera in the north, in Bnei Brak.
It's been happening.
It's been going on.
No, I know. Funny enough, it hasn't been that big a story here, really.
No, it's getting bigger.
It's horrible.
Israel has a new security issue with AK-47s, Uzis on the streets of Israel. They dealt with suicide bombs, and of course they built a huge wall to defend themselves against Palestinians coming out of the West Bank. Gaza with Iranian rockets flying into Israel. They dealt with Iron Dome. Of course, 91% of the rockets that come in.
That doesn't mean that everything Israel does is quite right.
No, we're not here to say that Israeli policy isn't to be criticised. But these people don't criticise Israel. What they want is the destruction of Israel.
I know.
That's the difference.
Literally, the obliteration.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I get that. But of course, campaigns for racial equality, we all want to support. And in the wake of the horrible murder of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, this organisation appeared, and everybody was to bow down and take the knee. And I knew Black Lives Matter from my time in America.
Right.
You know, I knew what they were. I knew it was hard left, Marxist, defund the police, etc. And you know, criticising it was for me a very difficult place. You were in a similar position on that, weren't you?
I was in the Supporters Trust at Aston Villa. I spoke out about it. I spoke out about it on a personal basis, not representing the football club or indeed the Supporters Trust.
Yeah.
And I was subjected to appalling racism, some of it from officers inside the football club. If it wasn't for the chief executive and the chief operations officer, it could have got very mucky in a Yorkshire Cricket Club kind of way. But I salute Christian Purslow and Paul Tyrrell basically for taking care of me. I'm just a fan now. That'll do me. I love Villa. There's nothing the haters can do about that. I am from Birmingham. It is the top of my identity. You know, it's my club.
But what happened? I mean, you know, Black Lives Matter was emblazoned all over Sky Sports. I mean, this organisation that no one knew anything about, we were all supposed to support. Did we all go mad?
Yeah, we didn't do our due diligence on them at all. And they finally, Richard Masters at the Premier League decided it was a good idea without doing the appropriate due diligence on it. And then suddenly, after the kerfuffle, Black Lives Matter became no room for racism. It became something slightly different. However, that knee thing still happens.
Yeah, I can't work it out.
It's difficult to see. And now what they've done is put it into the hands of the players to decide when it's going to stop. When's it going to stop?
I know. It's just...
and now it does... I mean, when I go to games, it gets an applause because it's no room for racism.
Yeah.
But that knee thing, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Jonny, we could talk for hours. Thank you for joining me on
It's an absolute pleasure, mate.
Pints. Thank you very much indeed.